Hello friends, welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. I hope you all are doing great and staying safe and taking care of yourself. If you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel yet, I would request you to subscribe so that you get an updated notification whenever cloud or any DevOps related stuff gets uploaded on my channel. Before we start with the main content, if you are one of me or someone who is going to start their career into the cloud computing world and wanted to know where to start or which certificate we should do to get start your career into the cloud computing, then you have come to the right channel on the YouTube. In today's video, we are going to basically talk about whether the fundamentals are really needed to start your career into the cloud computing world or not. There are different cloud providers in the market, and the popular one is Amazon AWS. Apart from Amazon AWS, there are cloud providers like Microsoft, Google, Oracle, IBM, Alibaba, and plenty of them. But all these providers have one thing in common, is the fundamentals. If you want to start your career into the cloud computing world, then knowing the fundamentals is quite important. If we pick AWS, then AWS has its own fundamental certificate called as AWS Cloud Practitioner. If you pick up Google, then Google has its own fundamental certificate called as a Google Cloud Engineer Associate. If I move with Microsoft, then there are plenty of fundamental certificate offered by Microsoft Azure, and the common is AZ900, which is Azure Fundamentals. If you are into a data analyst role, then you can start with data fundamentals. If you want to start your career with the artificial intelligence, then they have something called as AI 900, artificial intelligence fundamentals. And also, do not worry if you are into the reporting world like Tableau or Power BI, then Microsoft has the fundamental certificate for that too. And as well as all these cloud providers focus on the security of how to secure your environment when you are moving your applications from on-premise to the cloud world. So without any delay, let's move to the main agenda of this video, which is how should I pass AWS Cloud Practitioner exam or a certificate. So let's get started with this video. As I mentioned that cloud is for everyone, be it a technical person or a non-technical person. All you need to do is understand the fundamentals of cloud. As we speak that which certificate is ideal if you want to start your career with the cloud, and here it's the AWS Cloud Practitioner certificate, which is for the non-technical people who do not have their technical background but still want to start their career into the cloud computing world. So let's get started with this Cloud Practitioner certificate by AWS. You might or you should know for clearing your AWS Cloud Practitioner exam, which is AWS CCP certificate. So moving to the today's agenda, here is what are the certificates offered by AWS for anyone who is interested to start their career as a cloud computing, but choosing Amazon slash AWS as it's one of the cloud providers. Moving to the next, for who all is AWS Cloud Practitioner certificate for. Moving to the third point, how to enroll for a certificate or an exam. And the most important next topic would be preparation plan. And the last one would be some tips and tricks before you appear for your exam on the final day. So These are some of the things where we would be proceeding with. The first one is understanding the list of certificates offered by AWS, which is number one, the foundational, number second, the associate, number third, professional, and number fourth, specialty. Moving to the next point, we would be walking through how to create an AWS account if you are new to AWS. And the last topic, we would be focusing on something called as how to enroll yourself for a certificate exam. Whether you're taking from home, office, what are the questions, what is the exam fee, how many questions would be asked in the exam or for that certificate. Okay, so here is a brief, or I would say a summary of certificates available by AWS. As I mentioned, the cloud is for everyone. So moving to the first certificate, it is called as a foundational level certificate, and it is the AWS Cloud Practitioner certificate. In this certificate, basically, or in this course, the foundational, as the name suggests, it covers all the basic idea about what is cloud computing, what are the services offered by AWS for for your application, from infrastructure point of view, from monitoring point of view, for auditing point of view, and many other things. Moving to the next one is an associate certificate, which is divided in three layers. The first one is AWS Solution Architect, as the name suggests, architect. If you are one of the person who is interested in designing the solutions, system designing, then this certificate is for you. And in this certificate, it the AWS basically goes into the depth of each and every services. For an example, you would be getting into a depth of how to basically give the roles to the services or to the individuals, as well as understanding into a depth like what is NAT instance, what is NAT gateway, what are securities, how are route 53 tables used, and many more things. Moving to the second associate certificate is AWS SysOps Administrator Associate, and this certificate basically provides within the security concepts and auditing perspective. If you are someone who is into the system admin role or infrastructure monitoring, then I would definitely recommend this certificate for you. And the last one here in the associate hierarchy is AWS Developer Associate Certificate. As the name suggests, developer. This certificate is basically for the people who are into a development area, like who have good hands-on on Java technology, Python, and couple of other technologies. So this certificate is ideally for them. And once you have successfully passed any one of these certificate at the associate hierarchy, the next one is a professional certificate, and that goes into a more depth of understanding and securing your environment on the cloud, and that is AWS Solution Architect Professional. And in the professional, the next is AWS DevOps Engineer. As I mentioned, if you are into a system admin, infrastructure monitoring, and you are aware about site reliability concepts, DevOps tools, then this certificate is for you, because in this certificate, basically you would be touching the depth points of how to deploy the AWS CI/CD pipeline using AWS code pipeline, and couple of other things like using elastic compute service, using elastic container service, using elastic Kubernetes service, and etc. And if you are someone who wants to get specialized in one of the core technology, then you have the specialty certificate organized by AWS, and that is advanced networking, big data, then you have security, machine learning, and Alexa skill builder. I hope this you got an overview of what all certificates AWS provide. As I mentioned, again, the cloud is for everyone, be it a technical, non-technical, or new baby to the IT world. Cloud is for everyone. Moving to the next and important topic which we were discussing is, or this basically this video is for, is AWS Cloud Practitioner is for who can basically enroll for this certificate. So the first tip I would like to give you here is, first, schedule the exam. Unless you have a date or a deadline, you will not start preparing yourself for that course. So I would advise you to pick up a date and schedule that date for the AWS Cloud Practitioner exam. Once you have that date, then you can start planning of how to prepare yourself for that certificate or for the exam. So number one tip, schedule the exam. I would really recommend you to first pick up a date and schedule yourself for the exam. And here is the process for enrolling yourself or scheduling yourself for the exam. All you need to do is follow these steps listed on the screen, and it's very simple. Log into the AWS training slash certification website, sign in, use your AWS account. If you haven't created your AWS account, then please do watch my video on how to create your AWS account, and then you can schedule the exam and select AWS CCP, which is Certified Cloud Practitioner. Once you have done, then you can select the nearest exam center if you want to go at the center and appear for the exam. Or these days, due to Kuwait situation, the AWS has the provision to schedule to appear for the exam from home or office. And then the last step is exam fee, right, which is around like $100. I hope you got the list of steps of how to schedule or enroll. So the second tip here is to understand the exam guidelines. So what is this exam, or what are the contents focus of for this certificate, which is AWS Cloud Practitioner? Unless you know what kind of questions or what this exam focuses on, you would not be able to prepare yourself for the AWS Cloud Practitioner exam. So remember, second tip, exam guidelines or exam overview. To understand how is your exam format going to be, and this is what it is. As I mentioned, the knowing the exam format makes you prepare for the exam or prepare for that certificate. So it's a foundation level certificate, and there would be around 65 questions, and it's a multi choice or multi response question, and the length to complete that exam is 90 minutes. So remember, do not waste time on one particular question. If you don't know that particular question, or if you're confusing in answering that question, then please move ahead. You have 90 minutes. So once you have given or attended all 65 questions, you can go back and do a glance whether I have answered it correctly, or if you have missed out something, you get a chance to review your answers to the questions. So please do not waste time on much on answering one question. Now we have scheduled our exam, got to know what the exam contents would be. The third tip here is to enroll yourself for a specific course or a course which will help you to prepare yourself for the exam, and that is here to the course. what are the courses available which will prepare you for the certificate or for the exam. And here is the list of mm, videos or the practice tests which will help you to prepare yourself for AWS certified cloud practitioner exam. If you're looking for a free content, then YouTube is your friend, and I would highly recommend you to go through the videos for the mentioned people on the slide. The first one is Andrew Brown. He touches base all the necessary topics which is needed to prepare yourself for the AWS cloud practitioner exam. The second one is Neil Davis. Neil Davis, I personally like the video content by Neil Davis because he explains the things in the simpler way and also a scenario based way. So if you're looking something to understand in a practical scenario way, then I would highly recommend you to enroll yourself for the Neil Davis video content. And he also runs a site called as a digital cloud training, where he has the worksheets or the notes which you can download and on your mobile or on your laptop, and whenever you're free you can view that content. It's a PDF file you can easily download and start reading it as and when you have the time. Moving to the next step is the practice test. It's very important to understand what type of questions would be asked in the exam, or I would say to get the gist of whether I have prepared myself and I'm ready for the exam. Giving a practice test makes you prepare for the exam and gives you confidence. So these are the three well-known practice tests available on Udemy, and you can basically enroll yourself for that. The first one is Stephanie Mark, the second is Neil Davis, and the third is Tutorial to Dojo. And Tutorial Dojo is one of the practice tests which basically helps you to understand the things. If you have answered something wrong to a particular question, he goes into the depth and basically makes you understand in a simpler way. Same as Neil Davis does, but people normally recommend to go for Tutorial Dojo practice test. So I would, it depends upon preference to preference. So whichever you are comfortable, please go ahead and enroll yourself for the practice test. Remember, practice test will give you a confidence and will prepare you for the AWS cloud practitioner exam which you are looking to get yourself certified for. The fourth tip, and which is an important tip which will help you to prepare yourself for AWS Cloud Practitioner exam, is taking down the key notes or key topics which I would like to focus before I appear for the exam on my final day. And all I'm going to do is walk you through this with a small presentation. Remember, taking notes, it's an important aspect for any of the certificate which you're preparing. So let's start with a small presentation on this. So taking notes and key topics to focus on. Okay, so let's get started with this. And here are some of my self-study notes, okay, which I have done while I was preparing for this exam. And basically I basically tried to answers these questions to know where I am standing and what topics I need to basically focus in order to clear the cloud practitioner exam. So as I mentioned, the fundamentals, foundations, these are very key important aspect to understand from the cloud computing perspective, and knowing the basics will make you stronger, and will help you to clear your other certificates if you're looking to give associate or a professional level certificate down the line after you have cleared this practitioner exam. Or not only that, but if you want to explain someone into a simpler manner, knowing the basics would definitely help you to answer those questions asked by your subordinates or by client or any one of your friends. Okay, so the first one here is you should understand what is virtualization. These days everyone is moving to virtualization. We have come up with Docker, where you do not need any infrastructure down the line. All you need is to put an image, and Docker would basically start provisioning your infrastructure and other stuff, right? Virtualization, Terraform is another form of getting your virtual machines up and running. So you should understand the concept of virtualization. And in virtualization there is something called as a bare metal and hypervisor. So understand the difference between what is metal or what is hypervisor. Hypervisor gives you a provision to install the operating system and different operating systems. So you that's where understand the concept. Okay, moving to the next one, which is very important in from the cloud computing model perspective. The first one is infrastructure has service versus platform has service and versus software has service. Okay, so understand the difference between these three, which will basically give you an idea what is AWS as a cloud provider, providing you the computing models to help deploy your application on the cloud. And the most important, the third one, is the types of cloud deployment. So the cloud has every cloud, as I mentioned, cloud is for everyone, right? So if you want your application to be publicly accessed, you can deploy on the public. If you have the applications which are really critical and do not want to get exposed to the public, then there is a private cloud. And as I mentioned, the last one is a hybrid cloud, which is a mixture of your on premise and the cloud. So there would be something you want to keep your servers on the data center, and some applications you or some you want to eliminate some servers and move it into the cloud. So there is where you can go ahead with the hybrid module as well. The next important point I would try to understand or would should look out for the answer if I am appearing for AWS Cloud Practitioner is what is region, what is availability zone, what are the local zones, what is difference between the edge location versus the regional edge caches. So these are the some important concepts you should know, because exam will definitely test you on this. And while I was preparing for the exam, I got around like 2 3 questions on this. So it's very important to understand. And as I mentioned, this is your fundamental, because once you understand this, it becomes an easier to prepare yourself for the associate and professional level. Moving to the next one is understand what is EC2 instance, what is user data, what is AMI concept, right? EC2 instance in simple term is nothing but your server, which is some people call it as a host, some people call it as a virtual machine. Okay, so understand that concept, right? Moving to the next important one is understand the pricing module, pricing model, right? What are the offers or discounts you get when you choose for reserve instance versus dedicated host versus dedicated instances versus spot instances, right? So understand this pricing model, because exam will definitely test you on this, right? There would be definitely 1 or 2 questions on this. Mm, the another important concept you should understand is the different instance types. I do not want you to memorize that, but understand what is T2 for, what is C5 for. As C suggests, it's a computing machine, right? M, what is R for, what is I, what is D, what is G is for GPU, right? So understand these different types of instances. Do not memorize it, but make sure you understand the beneath concept of it. Moving to the another one is serverless concepts, which is AWS Lambda, and this plays a very important role, because AWS Lambda is like a function in Unix or subrouting in Perl, which it gets executed, and it and as the name suggests, it's a serverless, so you do not need an ec2 instance or kind of thing. It is a serverless concept. So it just gets executed, and you do not need to provision the infrastructure to it, right? The next one is understand the concept between what is CloudFront versus what is Cloud Triad. The CloudFront is for the content delivery network, which I mentioned, right? It helps you to basically put your content easily available for the users, and that's where the CloudFront and Cloud Trial, as the name suggests, it's basically analyzing your logs of the application or the server, right? So when auditing question comes, you can basically go ahead and basically check the Cloud Trial, like who started the machine or who revoked the terminate stuff of the server, right? So understand these concepts, be it an Amazon or Microsoft or Oracle cloud provider or Alibaba cloud provider, is understanding the concept of identity access management and what are the best practices for of it, right? In this slide, we are going to basically talk about the AWS from AWS perspective, as we are preparing ourselves for AWS Cloud Practitioner exam, right? So understand what is role, what is group, what is the users, what all roles you can give it to and service account or to an individual users, and group if you are into a development group, and if you are into the support group and you have multiple users and you want to combine, instead of giving each user the same access again and again, you can basically come up with a concept called as a group, where you can put all the users into one group and give the role to that group, right? So understand that concept. Another important thing is access. So you can access your account or kind of thing in two ways. One is API key, and the third is MFA, which is multi-factor authorization, right? So understand that difference between these two. The third important point in identity access management is understanding the policy concepts. What is inline policies, right? What are the policies you can assign to a particular user, right? So that's what you need to understand. And one of the I would say this question, there would be one question on this or kind of thing, but understand the what is AWS STS, security token access. This is nothing but giving a temporary access. So temporary access, and in the form of token, right, to access a particular service or etc. So it's like your soft token. If you're working remotely, right, you use the RSA token, right, to log into the to the network, right? So that's it's similar on that term. So understand that concept. The next important concept you should understand, and there would be definitely 3 to 5 questions on this, is storage, S3, which we call it, right? So it's very important to understand the storage concept as the which is S3. So in the S3, you understand the usage of the S3, which is it can be used for hosting a static website, hosting your media content like videos. You can also use S3 for backup and storage. The next important concept you need to understand is the storage capacity. You have an unlimited storage, but the size varies from 0 to 5 TB, right? But the storage capacity is unlimited. Moving to the next and important thing, you would definitely have 2 or 3 questions on this, is to understanding the storage classes. And exam will definitely test you on these 4 important concepts or 4 important storage classes. First one is S3 standard storage, S3 IA intelligent pairing, the third is S3 one zone, and the last one is S3 glacier. And there is another thing in glacier called as S3 deep archive. So definitely understand the difference between all these four, because there would be a question in exam. And one important thing you need to understand when you're dealing with S3 Glacier Deep Archive is to understand the retrieval timings of that, right? So expected retrieval, standard retrieval, bulk retrieval, right? So under expected is you would be retrieving an object from S3 within 3 to 5 hours, and standard would be more than 8 hours, and bulk would be around 12 hours, something like that. You need to understand the difference between all these three retrieval timings, and there would be definitely a question. Another important concept when we are dealing with the storage or S3 is the object level access versus a bucket level access. So understand what is bucket, what is an object, right? It's bucket is nothing but you can term it as a pointer where you store all the objects, and you need to access those pointers. You need to have an access, right? It's like kind of a folder kind of thing, right? But understand the concept, what is that, and the access stuff, right? Another important concept here is to understand the storage data type. What is difference between the persistent versus imperial versus transient, right? Is what is difference between the AWS Snowball versus Snow Mobile versus Snow cone, right? As the name suggests, Snow Mobile, it is basically it carries the your data stuff up to around 80 TB, right? And it Snowball can import to S3, or at the same time it can you can export your data from S3, right? So you can put your data into S3 once you have loaded into Snowball, and at the same time you can export or retrieve that from S3, right? Moving to the next important is Snowball Edge, which is 100 terabyte storage, and it comes with onboard storage and compute capabilities, right? The third one is Snow Mobile, which is exabyte scale up to around 100 petabyte per Snow Mobile, right? So these are some of the storage options you have, right, to move your data to the cloud, right, from your on-premise thing. The last important is a snow cone. As the name suggests, cone is a small device, and it is used for edge computing, storage, and data transfer, right? All these we are talking about is from the S3 and the storage concept perspective, which AWS provide you has these services for storage or moving your data from on-premise to the cloud, right? Moving to the another important stuff here is understanding the difference between EBS, elastic block storage, versus EFS, which is elastic file storage, versus instance storage, right? So understand, get well familiar with the concept between when and why EBS is to used when we use EFS and when we use instance store. In a small summary, instance store is used when you are looking for a performance, right? You send a request and you are looking for a immediately response from it, and from a performance perspective you use instance store, but it has a limitation. EFS is basically elastic file storage, which is nothing but our network file storage, right, where you store your data on the network. Okay, EBS, which is elastic block storage, so data is basically stored in the or divided into pieces and stored in the form of blocks, right? So understand a difference between all these three, because there would be questions in the exam for EBS, EFS, and instance storage. Moving to the another important when we are talking about EBS is the volume types, right? So it has something called as SSD. In that SSD, it is divided into provision IOPS versus journal purpose, and the second type is HDD, which is So understand the difference between these two. It will help you to answer the questions in exam, and more importantly, understand that EBS root volumes are deleted on termination by default. So when you terminate your EC2 instance, the root volume would be deleted and it is marked as true by default. Okay, so you need to change that. If you do not sorry it would be deleted, right? So if you do not want that to, you need to change the option, right? There is an option as well. Moving to the next important is understanding the concept of snapshots. Okay, so there is something called as a elastic block storage snapshots. If you want to copy your EBS block data from one block to another block, you can't directly do that. You need to go through something called as a snapshot, and snapshots will would be your point in time, what is captured at that time, right? So if you want that to be if you want a new EBS volume to be created, then from the older one, then you need to use something called as a snapshot. And definitely EBS volume can be encrypted or unencrypted or encrypted, right? So depending upon your requirement, you can basically uh, create an unencrypted EBS volume as well as encrypted EBS volume. As I mentioned, snapshots are point in time capture or that for that instance, right? So remember this important point, and it would be asked in exam if you are lucky, all right? Just kidding. uh, Moving to the another important concept is from the EBS perspective is that you can attach only one EBS volume to one instance, right, at a one time, because it's a specific to availability zone. It's one it's specific to only one availability zone. It's not like your EFS, which is a network drive where you can attach the network drive to multiple EC2 instances or multiple computers or a laptop. It's basically a block device, so it can be attached only to one um, mm, instance. Consider it has your pen drive, right? So that's one of the example. You can't attach one pen drive to multiple. The difference between EFS versus instant storage has mentioned in my previous slides that EFS is basically your network file storage. That means you can attach the network file storage to multiple EC2 instances at one time. EC2 is nothing but your host or virtual machine and can be accessed from multiple availability zones, right? So that's one of the important distinguish between EBS versus EFS. When we talk about instant storage, as I mentioned, if you're looking for a high performance, then it's basically nothing but your local hard drives, right? And the data is never persistent in that. Once you reboot your EC2 instance, your data is gone. So if you're looking for a high performance thing and that data is for temporary, you do not bother even though if it gets deleted, go with instant storage. All right. Moving to the next important concept you need to understand is difference between the NAT instance versus NAT gateway, right? And there would be definitely one or two questions on it. So be prepared, get yourself familiar with this concept, right? If you are new to the networking world, right, understand the concept of subnets, VPC, route tables, understand what is difference between the IPv4 versus IPv6, right? And another important concept you should understand is what is elastic network interface. See, do not go into a depth of that, but understand some fundamentals or an overview of that concept, right? AWS is not going to get into a depth if you're preparing for this exam, right? It's not into a depth, it's kind of overview, right? Understanding the why that services exist or why that thing even exists in the cloud computing world, right? So understand that. Another important thing exam would definitely ask you is difference between the public IP versus private IP and elastic IP. By default, every EC2 instance will have a private IP, right? Um, and the public id has the name suggests, it would change once you reboot or once you terminate once you reboot your instance, right? Elastic ip is something which will stay even though if you reboot your system, and AWS is charging for that, right? So make sure if you're using elastic ip, use it. If you don't need it, then do not even enroll for the elastic ip, because AWS is going to charge you for that, right? Now you have migrated your applications to cloud, and now you want to secure your cloud environment. So understanding the concept of security group versus a NACL, which is network access, um, uh, access, mm, okay. So understand the difference between these two, and this will definitely help you uh, to make your um, cloud environment secure, right? And one of the important concept you should understand between security group and NACL is, NACL is stateless. So you need to create the rules, uh, if for inbound and outbound traffic. And if you're using security group, then once you create a rule for inbound, the outbound traffic will automatically flow, right? So understand that difference, it is very important. Moving to another important concept which I mentioned you should know from the network perspective is, what is DNS, domain name service? What is the role of route 53, right? Understand what is direct connect, what is AWS global escalator, right? So definitely exam will test you on this, right? But not in the depth. There would be two or three questions on it, and it would be it would be kind of a definition question, or you will get an understanding when you appear for the practice test, as and when you have gone through the video content, right? Moving to the database, AWS also has provides you the database capability, and understand when to use RDS versus when to use DynamoDB versus Aurora DB, right? So RDS is nothing but your rational database system, right? If Oracle is one of your RDS system, right? If you're looking something for the multi availability zone and performance perspective, RDS is for you, right? For disaster recovery, right? As well, DynamoDB is something for is something a schema less, no SQL, right? Understand that more into a depth. Once you go through the content, you will come to know that what the use cases of DynamoDB versus Aurora DB, right? So understand that. And one important point to be noted from the RDS perspective, you do not have access to underlying DB instances, right? So that's one of the important point you should understand. Moving to the scalability, right? So you have migrated your application to cloud, but say you have an application, you have a website which basically has the it's a clothing website, right? And on Diwali the traffic gets you have lots of discounts running on your website, and many users comes into it, right? To access that website, you need to make sure that your website is ready to handle that capacity and should be available, right? So AWS has that provision for you, right? And that is horizontal scaling and vertical scaling, right? It's called as an auto scaling, right? As and when traffic increases, you basically do that to make sure that the site is available for everyone and there is no downtime, right? So you can basically do that by going for horizontal scaling versus vertical scaling, right? When we talk about horizontal scaling, it's nothing but adding multiple EC2 instances or multiple hosts or servers, right? Or virtual machines, right? when we talk about vertical scaling, is basically increasing the capacity, right? Simply, if you are now using 4 GB of RAM, and if your workload gets increase, right, you will increase the capacity, right, from 4 GB to 8 GB or 12 GB, right? So that's where you should understand this. Another important concept, you should understand something called as a elastic cache, right, where you store the small amounts of data, right, in the cache, right? A simple example can be a DB caching or a web store caching. DB caching, when we talk about, is a frequent use queries, right, when your application uses to retrieve the data. Another important concept you should understand is Amazon Redshift versus Amazon Elastic Cache, right? And it is another divide cloud, right? And you need to make sure that you have necessary monitoring and logging for that. So AWS has that for you, right? And it is called has Amazon Cloud Watch, Amazon Cloud Watch logs, AWS cloud trainer, right? So get familiar with these concepts. It would definitely help you to understand, and there would be one or two questions in exam, right? Another important thing you should understand is sharing a responsibility, right? a, um, a cloud provider can't handle everything, right? It is basically making sure that you have necessary infrastructure available to run your applications, but the security is something you need to take care of it, right? From infrastructure perspective, it will take care, but from the access, who to has access or whom you should not have access to your applications while running on the cloud, it's your responsibility, right? So understand this concept that AWS is responsible for security of the cloud, right? But customers are responsible for security in the cloud, right? So understand this sheer responsibility concept, and there would be definitely one or two questions in exam. Moving to another important concept from the storage perspective is the storage gateway. So there are three types of storage gateways. You have the file storage, the storage, and a tape gateway, right? So understand these type of storage gateways, and there would be one or two questions in the exam. Another important thing you should understand is the application integration. So you have deployed your application on cloud. Now you want to get a notification kind of thing if something goes wrong, right? Say you have set up a monitoring alert, but you want to get notify someone so that someone can action on it, right? So it has something, Amazon offers you something called as a simple notification service and simple queue service, right? So get familiar with these concepts, and there would be definitely one or two questions, right? Moving to an important concept in any of the cloud provider is cloud security, right? So in this topic we are talking from the AWS perspective, right? So these are the some of the important security concepts you should understand and get familiar with it. The first one is AWS artifact. What is AWS artifact? It is basically a central resource for all your compliance related information. You want to make sure that your applications on cloud are compliant, right? So make sure that you get familiar with AWS artifact concept, right? Another important thing is Amazon guard duty. You want to make sure that your application is or the application which is migrated on the cloud is basically protected from from the malicious access or unauthorized behavior, right? So this is where the guard duty plays an important role. It continuously monitors your application on the cloud to see whether it has any unauthorized access or it is exposed to any malicious content, right? So get familiar with that. Another important thing is if your application is web based application, you have something called as a AWS WAF. So it's a web application firewall, right? It helps you to protect your web applications. Another important concept is AWS Shield. It's basically protecting your application from distributed denial of service, which is commonly known as DDoS. Okay, now you want to protect your data, right? And you have some keys and other stuff, encrypted keys. So AWS has something for you that is called as AWS key management service, which is nothing but a centralized control over encryption keys used to protect your data, right? At the same time, you have something called as AWS inspector, which basically does a continuous assessment of security or for your applications when it is onboarded on cloud, right? Another important concept here provided by AWS is to help you to reduce the cost, increase the performance, improve your security, and that service is nothing but AWS trusted advisor, right? Another important concept is from the hardware security perspective. It's called as AWS Cloud HSM, right? So get familiar with these concepts. And moving to the another important concept is Amazon Cognito, right? You want to access the application from the mobile, right? It's a simple Facebook application, right? All you need to do is install the Facebook application, put your username and the password, and you are able to access the Facebook like you are accessing from the web, right? So get familiar with that. And another important concept is familiar with the AWS secrets manager, right? So understand this. It's very important. The last important concept is understanding the 5 pillars of AWS well architect framework, right? The first important is security, right? The second important is operational excellence. The third is reliability. The fourth is performance efficiency, and the fifth is cost optimization. So refer the AWS handbook. These 5 pillars are available on the website. You can basically just type in Google 5 pillars of AWS well architect framework, and you will get these topics there. So basically get familiar with all these concepts, and mm, make sure you do the practice test to make sure how much you have. The tip number 5 is an important tip. Whether you follow tip number 1, 2, 3, or 4, not, but please follow this tip number 5, and it is confidence on yourself. Unless you are not having confidence on yourself, you will not clear this exam. And how can I get confident on myself? Is just by attending the practice tests and hands-on lab. So I would request you to enroll yourself for the practice test organized by Neil Davis, Stephen Mark, or Tutorial 2J on Udemy or Wizlab. This test covers around 6 practice tests, and each test have around 60 questions, which will give you the confidence on sitting for the exam, and will help you to come up with a flying colors and get yourselves as AWS Cloud Practitioner certified. So wish you all the best. I hope this video was helpful and would help you to prepare yourself for the AWS Cloud Practitioner exam and come up with a flying colors. If you have liked this video, kindly do comment and subscribe to my YouTube channel for the updates on cloud and DevOps related stuff. Until then, take care.